of business come up? Everyone's in. Yes, thank you, Chair.
Great. Okay, thanks everybody for coming here. I welcome you to the December 20th Regional District Board meeting. We are happy to hold this on the traditional territory of the Tla'amin Nation. We have an agenda in front of us. Can I get somebody to, well, are there changes to the agenda?
Thank you, Chair. I think, yes, just no changes to any attachments or anything, but with regards to bylaws listed under 14.1 and 14.2, those had originally had 3 motions, 1 to adopt, but we will only be going to 3rd reading because we need approval of the inspector prior to adoption. Great. So they have been removed.
Thank you very much. So do I have a motion to adopt the amended agenda? Director Dowd, Director Gisborne, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries. Thanks very much. Minutes of the regular board meeting December 6th, 2023. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing no hands up, can I get a motion to adopt? Director McCormick and Director Gisborne, thank you. All in favor? None opposed, motion carries. No delegations, no unfinished business. We have 1 item of correspondence. I don't think there's any business arising from said correspondence. So we'll move on to the chair's report. And this is going to be a short one because it being December, there was no library meeting. There was no Stillwater Community Advisory Group meeting. The VIU steering committee was postponed. But I did get to serve as a volunteer server at the 19th Lang Bay Hall Seniors Christmas Dinner, which is always a really fun time. And it's a really neat event, a real throwback. And to see so many members of the community there. So it's a really neat time. And I want to get my hats off to all the volunteers that make it happen. That's all I've got this month. So Director Dowd, are you ready?
Yeah, well, I'm ready and it'll be short too. I just couldn't resist going to the engagement process on the Nootka Street potential development. I went up there. It was actually a really good turnout. There was a couple other members of council, at least 1 other member of council there, and a number of regional district directors, and they had a real good turnout of people from the neighborhood. And you know, I went there mostly because of impact that could possibly have sometime on the city with regard to services and transportation and etc. But I was glad to see them communicating with the public and trying to get their point across about what they would like to do, and the public getting their point back about what they'd like to see. So I appreciated that. And it's other than that, I've been really busy with city council stuff over the last 10 days. I'm looking forward to Christmas.
Yeah, I know.
I got duty to do on that day too. So
yes. Well, great. I'm glad to hear the public engagement went well. I regret that I've had other things planned that evening, but I'm glad that you were here to report on it for us. Director Lennox, we'll go up to the screen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll try to be as quick as I can. Receiving regular updates from the Northside Community Recreation Committee, the building committee for them, and the RFP that they're working on, so that's good. Getting lots of emails, as I mentioned earlier today, from Savary residents supporting water carrying capacity issues on Savary. And so we've talked a lot about that, but you can tell people are paying attention and supporting those issues. On a related note, ASIC, Association of Savary Island Committee, they issued their visitors survey, and I think some of the staff and possibly the chair have that, and if not, we can get it to you. I think I might have sent it out, but 472 respondents on the island. That's 90% of those were residents. Some interesting stats there. I won't go through them, but should be helpful in our as we move ahead and with the OCP and other efforts there. So good work by ASIC involving the community and getting right down to the grassroots on that. I just wanted to mention the 3 highest concerns for the respondents: risk of fire, number 2, water quality and availability, and number 3, protecting natural lands. So all good efforts. I was able to attend the Lift Supporting Housing Tour with the chair and others this last month, and so it's good to be toured around the facilities that we've been talking about, both at the regional district, the city, as a citizen, and so really good to meet staff and the people that are working hard to really give appropriate services for people and some of the challenges they face. So I was glad to be able to do that. Wanted to thank my alternate, Lynn Adamson. Was filling in admirably for me in the last planning, finance, hospital, and board meetings. A lot of material, as we've been talking about recently, to try to digest. And so I met with her prior, and it was quite a daunting task. So she filled in very well. So thanks for your support of her. At a recent CIMAC meeting, that's the Savary Island Marine Advisory. Again, lots going on there. They're working hard on how to protect that facilities now into the future, and some of the ongoing issues there, funding and others. I got to go into the Santa Claus parade again this year. I love to do that every year whenever I'm available, and so I typically take the Naval Sea Cadets and with my old Army truck, which is actually a naval truck, and I support our Sea Cadets. And the weather turned out great, and it was really cool to do that right up at the front. Sometimes I outpace the parade though, so people are yelling at me, but it's all in good fun. Was able to also go to the Nootka subdivision proposal public meeting recently. Again, just, we talk about issues, but until you lay eyes on, these neighborhoods, the folks that are involved, like the plans that we've seen, but then you can actually look outside and see that it was good, and people are very honest about their opinions when you go to these public hearings and give them the time to listen. So I thought that was very helpful as well. Almost done. And I just wanted to finally say thanks to our volunteers and people that'll be working over the holidays here. Lots of good work going on out there, and people that aren't able to put their feet up, like hopefully some of you. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Lennox. Sounds like things don't slow down in Area A, even with the holidays, but good for you. Director Fall.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple things to report, but it'll be fairly brief. So end of November, Coastal Invasive Species Committee met for its last meeting of the year, and they're moving into budget stuff. The Vancouver Island Regional Library Board met also late November, and we had a release in our committee of the whole agenda, I think it was, and talk about our budget. It was a pretty intense discussion because their budget's going up, but their proposed budget increases are in line with our budget, so it should be okay, and it's not that much for Lasqueti in the end. On November 30th, I attended a fairly interesting seminar put on by the provincial government, by the Ministry of Forests, called Forests in 2050. So it was information on what the province is doing, looking at future climate change and the kinds of expectations, and in particular what kinds of trees might grow in certain areas, what kind of trees might have trouble. So it was quite interesting. It might be available online afterwards, I'm not sure. The beginning of December, the 11th, I attended the Lasqueti Local Trust Committee meeting. They really appreciate that. I try to, if I can, attend and give a brief report. They always invite me, and I think it's good just to try to keep connections together. And I'll just end on a bit more positive note on the ferry. So the ferry has been running without cancellations, which is good. The operator, Western Pacific Marine, has hired a new marine superintendent, and he traveled to Lasqueti last week and met with the ferry committee all day. It was a very constructive meeting. He's someone who's had 40 years of experience on marine. He worked on BC Ferries a lot, and he's done a lot of stuff. So he really understands. The previous manager we were dealing with wasn't ever in marine. So this person really understood our issues. He rode on the ferry, so he really gets it. And our MLA is also taking an interest in our ferry issues, and he's trying to organize a public meeting because, as you may know, or I've said before, the contract actually says the operator is supposed to hold a public meeting annually. They haven't in the last 5 years. So we keep asking them and asking BC Ferries to make them, and it still doesn't happen. We didn't get a firm promise from the marine superintendent, but our MLA wants to just come over and do one. It'll be separate from their obligation, and it probably will be interesting because we don't know how excited people will get. They will be probably animated, but thank you, Chair. And the ferry's running, by the way. So it's, we have had full runs. We haven't had many cancellations in the last 2 weeks, so that's actually a positive. Maybe we'll end the year that way. Thank you.
Fantastic. I'm glad to hear. And the representative was able to get over and get home as well.
He was able to get over and get home. So and put up with us. And actually, he expected, just as if I may add, he expected. At the end of it, we asked him what he expected. He expected a lot more animosity from our ferry committee, and we're actually very level-headed people generally, at least when we're meeting with people. So, he was quite frank with us and happy. Like, he expressed that to us, which sort of meant we've made a bit of a connection there. And he can't promise anything. He's not, he's not his man. He's not his boss's boss. So, but he at least, I think, is really open to discussing. And he said, "You can tell me anything." So we told him things that were really difficult to hear for him, but he was receiving. So yeah, it's at least a step in the right direction.
Great, glad to hear. Director Gisborne, I know you have at least one thing.
Yeah, I got a couple of things. I'm going to work backwards so that I end on a high note.
Okay.
I'll start with the bad news. On Sunday the 17th, there was an incident in Area B involving the dog owner. Dogs had been let out in the morning. The gate was open. Dogs took off, and they went and killed some goats on another farmer's property. It's a very sad situation. There's a lot of concern in the community. I actually had met the dogs when they were puppies, and the owner had said, like, "I'm going to hold on to this one puppy because the puppy was having some very dangerous and concerning behavior, even at a very young age." But the RCMP have been involved. It is between the farmer and the dog owners. They are working through what to do with the situation. The dog owner is liable for the damages and the loss of the livestock. Also, everyone in the community seems to also recognize that under the Livestock Act, if an animal is chasing your livestock, the farmer does have the right to put the dog down on the spot. If dogs are chasing wildlife, there's similar provisions in there. And I know this is an incident that speaks to concerns that were occurring on Texada, and seeing that this has happened in Area B, there's been a lot of community chatter and concern growing around it. But I just want to say here that both parties are in communication with each other. The RCMP is involved, and they are dealing with the matter, and whether the dogs get put down or not is up to the parties that are with respect to it. So there's not much for us to do, but that is just a very concerning incident that happened in Area B. And then on the 14th, so I'm working backwards, there was the Nootka Street proposed development, not a subdivision. And I'm very grateful for Director Doubt, Councillor Almeida, who I also saw in attendance, and Director Lennox, who came and attended. There was a lot of community turnout, a lot of discussion and concern, and it is one of those kind of situations up on Nootka when you look at it on paper versus looking at it in person. You kind of get a different feel for what's kind of going on in the whole area. And I believe that we're going to be getting a very thorough and in-depth staff report from our planning department that goes over all of the concerns that are being raised and how to move forward. And then to end on some positive news, on Wednesday the 13th at 12:04 a.m., the birth of my third child occurred. He was born at 8 pounds and 13 ounces, so same number of ounces as the date. And it turned out when they held him up, it said exactly 4 kilos. So he's being consistent. Mother and baby are healthy and happy, and the two older siblings, the 2-year-old and 4-year-old, are being absolutely wonderful and very gentle with baby. So everyone's doing okay. And so that's the bit of joyous news. And if that's why I seem a little tired and I haven't had a haircut, that kind of explains it, because I'm holding it together. So
Thank you. Well, on behalf of the board, I want to wish you congratulations, and to Bronwyn and the rest of the family, of course.
Here.
Director McCormick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On the 25th and 26th of November was the Texada Island Community Society Winter Market. Extremely well attended. Fortunately, no outbreaks of any diseases were reported from there because it was very crowded, but it was great at the community hall. On the 28th, Tourism Bell River had its annual general meeting virtually. On the 1st of December, there was the Spirit Breakfast at Mary Mary's restaurant. Give them full credit, and it was a fundraiser for the Texada Food Bank. The 13th, Texada Garden Club had its annual Christmas party, and on the 14th, the Xerox, spelled Zyrox, mining company had its open house on Texada. It was there was no presentation per se. It was storyboards placed around the community hall, and people wandered, and officials were there to ask questions. And yeah, like I say, there was no presentation, no group discussion at all. It was all individual, one-on-one sort of thing. Very polite, and so that was good to see them there. On the 15th, the Rec Commission met, Texada Island Recreation Commission, and they were a number of things. They're considering new tables for the community hall, considering putting gates up at the 2 ball fields to enable off-season, off-leash dog people to be able to contain their animals. And also at Emily Lake, Mr. Devereaux reported on some very good news from the province, and that is that the expansion project has been sponsored by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. That doesn't mean it's approved, but it has an official sponsor, which is really good news. And they're anticipating 12 to 24 months until we hear a response, which I'm told is like lightning speed. Where 5 years is the norm. And then last night was our annual truck parade organized by Gillies Bay Fire Chief Rob McWilliam, and all of the fire trucks and a few other trucks were all decorated up with Christmas lights, and they paraded the length of the island between Venanda and Gillies Bay, both the high road and the low road. And so a lot of people got out to see them, including us. So great to see the Christmas spirit alive and well on Texada Island.
It's always fun to hear about all the community involvement that happens on Texada Islands.
Sure.
It's great.
Thank you.
And the great support they have for the food bank or all that sort of stuff. Dr. Isaacson.
I'm not
caught off guard here,
but I think there's 2 things that could be relevant to the regional district board. One I mentioned during committee of the whole this morning. I just wanted to reiterate, not as a designate of the city, but just as an elected official, was invited to sit on the disaster and climate risk and resilience assessment project economy value working group. And so I don't represent the city, but if any directors or people in your regions or businesses in your regions that might have ideas on what risk and resilience might look like due to climate disasters, especially in a rural context, because making sure that whatever is created in terms of a provincial framework based on our working group doesn't focus on the Lower Mainland. Happy to hear those ideas. And the other thing that I wanted to share, and anyway, so our first meeting was last Friday, but the other I wanted to share is I attended the Volunteer Pell River, which is a kind of a youth can volunteer initiative, but their members are not just youth from the city. Often it's a catchment of mostly, I would say, the city and regional district on the mainland. But if you are looking for opportunities to connect with youth or hear youth perspectives or to find out how to reach more youth in your region, it's a really great group to get connected to. They do focus on volunteer opportunities. They help with, seniors breakfast setup and SPCA, and you can call on them to support events that require volunteers, but are also just a generally politically engaged group and of representing a variety of backgrounds. So just wanted to highlight that as a connection to youth in our region.
Great, thanks. Do you find that there are a good supply of volunteers for these organizations, or are they all
I can't speak to the organizations that are seeking volunteers. I mean, my attendance at this meeting was the volunteers themselves. So it's a weekly meetup of young people. They focus on volunteers, but they also have study groups. They also support each other in other ways and take action on issues that they care about. So when I was there as a city councillor speaking about, things that are in front of council and our budgeting process. They had tons of questions, and it was, but again, if you're looking to connect and find out about inroads with youth that maybe represent areas beyond the city, it could be a great inroad. And so that's Volunteer Pell River or Youth Can 2020. It's a program that is supported through the United Way locally.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Moving on to the consent agenda. I understand there may be one or two items.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So Mr. Tom, Manager of Emergency Services, has requested to pull 10.3.
Okay.
Director McCormick has requested to pull 10.8 and has provided an alternative motion. And I'd just like to note that item 10.1 is Directors A, B, C, D, unweighted vote, not weighted. That's just an error.
Okay. So we have pulled 10.3 and 10.8. Do we have any more? We have to see Director out.
I've been thinking about some questions I want to ask about voting.
Okay.
Right? And I'm thinking it's a little irregular, but if I can ask questions under the consent agenda, I can probably deal with all of the questions that I have focused in one shot, because there's a lot of differences in the voting regularities that are discussed in the consent agenda. So I'd like to have a little latitude to talk to staff, I guess, and ask questions about the voting and use the consent agenda as an example for those questions.
Okay, does that seem like a reasonable time to do it? Let me find out if there's anybody else. I saw Director Lennox had something he wanted to pull.
Yes, Chair, please pull 10.1.
Oh, pulling 10.1. Okay. Yeah. All right. So 10.1, 10.3, 10.8. Yes. They'll all move to 11, 1, 2, and 3. So we'll turn the chair or the microphone over to Director Doubt.
I've got a few questions, and they don't always come up, but there seems to be a lot of them tonight about weighted votes and unweighted votes and who votes on what. So I thought be a good idea to clarify some of them, partially because I know they're going to be an open topic for discussion at a council meeting that we probably have tomorrow, and always have been at other times. So I'm looking, just for staff, I'm looking at 10.3, which is a budget amendment for the Northside fire protection. And the listing on the agenda is all directors weighted vote. And the next one down is directors remuneration expense amendment, and that's all directors unweighted vote. And I wonder if you could explain why one goes one way and why one goes the other way. Northside fire protection, I don't think has much to do with the city other than that it's a budget amendment. And the other ones, I wonder if we can go on to another question after that, if you could give me an answer.
Yes.
1 second, Director.
I think those two should actually be flipped, because Northside Fire Protection Services in one electoral area, so you can't have a vote of one director. So it becomes the whole board, which should then be unweighted. But then the remuneration, which is finance, should then be weighted. So I think those two should.
I can address the questions.
The corporate officer.
Let's hear.
Okay, so this is a budget amendment. So those are treated under section 210, weighted voting on financial matters. And so that would be under section 2C of that. So even though if this was administration and operation of that service, so if all this money was already in the budget and then we were saying, let's award this contract, that would then be all directors unweighted, because there's only one director. So that would go under a section 207(5) vote. But because this is putting money into the budget, we use section 210 of the Local Government Act. So for remuneration and expense amendment, that bylaw, that is dealt with in section 208 of the Local Government Act. And I'll get you the subsection, just give me half a second. 208 2I, I believe. Just need to double check. The remuneration bylaw is dealt with in section 208. I just have to and one more half a second.
Mhm.
So we got lots of resources here, so that is under corporate powers, not financial powers. And it's just going to take me a second. Guys.
All right.
I know it before the table of concordance. So it was a section 291-2, and that was all and one person, one vote. So I just have to go to the table of concordance, which I have.
Great.
Okay. I've just got a couple more, and I see the 10.5 is a cemetery amendment. It just it moves area E from the voting. Follows the logic of what you said before. And the budgetary amendment for Savary Island, it's kind of like the Northside Fire Department one. Then we get to the financial plan draft one. That's a financial plan, and that's simply all directors unweighted vote. And is there a reason that's unweighted? Because we're talking about financial plan.
Yes, so thank you. So for the cemetery, that was under a 209 2C vote, which would be participants and weighted. So electoral area E does not participate in the cemetery service. And so this is so that's why that would be that way. 1006 is how I described it before. So with regards to 10.71, that is amending a service establishment bylaw. And under the Local Government Act, that is dealt with in section 208 2A, which is all directors unweighted. So that gives each director who's sitting here one vote. And so that's why that's handled. I know this says financial plan draft one, but that's how that would be determined. So that is under the Local Government Act 208 2A. That is amending a service establishment bylaw.
You're getting great marks so far. I have 2 more questions.
Okay.
Then we'll be over. But I appreciate your participation or your patience here. So number 2 on 10.07 talks about the signatures of at least 2/3 of the participants in the service. And could you elucidate who the participants in the service are and how you get the 2/3 and how many is 2/3? Because that is something I had to ask you to get a definition of. So I think it'd be really good to clarify that for everybody.
Thank you. Yes, I can. Okay, I think that would be section 346 and 347 of the Local Government Act. The Waste Management Service has 6 participants. So that would be the City of Powell River, Skeety Island, Electoral Area E, Texada Island, Electoral Area D, Area C, Area B, and Area A. So that would be 6 participants, and 2/3 of the majority would be 4 of the participants signing. And then consent is provided from the electoral area directors themselves signing, or the board's electing to sign on their behalf. And then council could also provide consent.
Okay, and that's, I believe what you're saying is the City of Powell River Council would provide one consent. It wouldn't be Director Isaacson and myself giving our consent. So there would be a total of 6 participants.
Yes.
And it would take 4, I believe, to pass.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, and the last one for clarification is all of these are slightly different, but they're all in the consent agenda. And I think that it really doesn't matter whether they're weighted or unweighted or who participates, because generally the consent agenda is passed unanimously. So everybody's saying yes. Just to clarify, if anybody has that I question in their background about why are they all different in the consent agenda. That's my opinion on how that works. So if I'm wrong, let me know.
Thank you. Yes, through the chair. That is how it works. That is the practice with other regional districts who utilize this method. Okay,
just want to say thank you very much for your patience. Not usually a place where we get to ask questions.
Sure. Director Gisborne.
Yeah, and I made an error because where I'd said the first one, my understanding of Northside fire protection would be an unweighted vote, because I just looked at the first part, which is the budget amendment. But the second part of that motion is that there's borrowing, and I do believe that was clarified that when it comes to borrowing, that then becomes a weighted vote amongst the entire board. Kind of like when the municipality says, hey, we need to borrow so many millions of dollars for the sewer treatment plant, and it becomes a weighted vote amongst the whole board, even though it's not a service that anyone else participates in, because it's borrowing. So I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, which one do we put as 11-1? Was that 10-3?
That was 10-3.
Okay.
Oh no, yes, we could, yes. And then 10-01 is 11-3.
Okay, so we're going into the former 10.3.
No, we're going to adopt the consent.
Oh, we got it. Yeah. Okay, so that's the consent agenda as adjusted. Thank you, Director Gisborne. Seconded by Director McCormick. No other discussion. So all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now we are on to 11.1, which is the former 10.3.
I'm just going to share my screen share.
Sure.
Director, if I can, I think
Mr. Thomas has some explanation for us. Mr. Thomas?
Yes, if I could through the chair, I'd like to add all of the resolution that you already have is all good. And I would like to add this final section that pursuant to our current procurement policy, the QRD uses a buying group, and that has allowed us to, with this budget amendment, to move a little bit quicker. And we've been working on this for many months, and we do have an offer that we would like to be able to move forward on before the end of this year, as the manufacturers are aware of some price increases going into 2024. And so it's a benefit of the buying group that would allow us to move on this once this is in place. But I would need the direction from the board to move forward with the offer that we have from Rocky Mountain Phoenix for this fire engine.
Okay, thanks very much. And we've got the changes to the addition, I guess, to the motion.
Thank you, Chair. So this would be the entire motion. And then so because that's difficult to read, I have presented the addition here.
Okay. And this is all one motion. So do we have somebody who'd be wish to make that motion? Director Lennox, Director McCormick, any discussion? Director Lennox.
Yeah, I appreciate Mr. Tom's addition to this. I think we can all see that the longer you wait for purchase of these large pieces of apparatus, the cost just keeps rising. So I appreciate him letting us know of that urgency. Thank you.
Great. Seeing no other questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. So on to 10.8. Is that correct? Director McCormick? 11.2.
Thank you. Yes. And the motion that is in our package, I would like to add 4 words to it. So I'm moving an amended motion. In the middle paragraph, where it says to investigate grant possibilities, I would like to add including community works funds for funding the assessment. So it's with the addition of those 4 words.
Okay, so it's not really an amendment, you're just making the motion.
To include community works. reference in there.
Made the motion, seconded by Director Gisborne. Any discussion?
Sounds like a good motion.
Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Great, okay, and on to former 10.1.
I would suggest that we put 10.1 after 12.1. Is one is talking about doing public engagement based on 12.1. So just for procedural, it might make sense to talk about 12.1 before 10.1.
Thank you. There, yeah, that does make sense. Yes, thank you.
So that is now being bounced from 10.1 to 11.3 to 12.
We're going.
No,
12.3.
12.3. There we go.
We can consider those with 12.1.
But consider with 12.
Yeah.
You tell me how to do it. Okay, so it's part of 12.1.
I'm just concerned as to why Director Lennox wanted to pull it from the first place. Maybe that would shed some light as to why it's from the consent.
Director Lennox?
Yeah, and it's probably more because I unfortunately couldn't attend the last planning committee meeting, and I've had some recent discussions as of today that I just wanted to ask mostly for clarity, and I have a suggestion coming out of that. So maybe I'll just ask my question now, Chair.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Basically, I'm just looking at the draft bylaw and the portion of ALR, and I'm just having discussions with folks about, you know, this new focus from the provincial government, making sure things like STR, short-term rentals, and the uses that we're permitting there are, you know, basically asking staff if there are any other considerations with the way that our two sections, rural mixed use and specifically the agricultural zone considerations about use there, and anything with the latest direction from the province.
Ms. Rodden, do you want to take that one?
Through the chair. Yeah, the short-term rental legislation has no impact on this bylaw. Yeah, the only allowable uses in the agriculture zone are agriculture and single-family residential and a secondary suite.
Okay. Thanks. And just to point it out that we're actually, the motion is talking about a public hearing, and it's choosing the directors for the public hearing. So it's not really about the meat of the bylaw itself. Pardon?
They can stay under 11 then.
So just deal with it under 11?
Well, yes.
Yes.
Okay. The advice I'm getting here is that we can just deal with this as it is under as 11.3 and then move on to 12.1 as was originally on the agenda. So I have, it's all one motion. Do I have somebody that wants to make that? We're talking about 11.1. Director McCormick, thank you. Seconded by Director
Discussion.
Discussion.
Yeah, based on the discussion around the ALR, and I'm hearing that the zoning bylaw only allows a principal dwelling and a secondary suite. It is a permitted use on agricultural land reserve to do agritourism. I think you can have, I think up to 8 or 12 campsites.
Point of order, Chair. This is a public hearing.
Pardon? Yeah, we're talking about the public hearing. I think your questions could probably be addressed in item 12.1 when it actually goes to, because I think we're talking.
Oh, I thought we'd move the public hearing motion after to 12.3. Oh,
after hearing Director Lennox's concerns, it was prudent to just deal with the 11.1.
Okay, so
just voted on that.
So just for clarification, so the item before us is that we're talking about doing a public hearing based on a proposed zoning bylaw that is, we don't have draft 1, draft 2, or draft 3 has not been passed yet. So if this motion passes, but the next motion doesn't, then do we still go and do the public hearing without the zoning bylaw going through first, second, and third reading? Is this a case of the cart before the horse?
I'm taking advice here.
Through the chair. I think what you're looking at is the proper chronology here. Because if you guys decide not to do the other, that's fine. The meat and potatoes of this particular motion is the hearing, who's going to attend, who's going to be there, and who's going to chair it. If you guys decide not to have it, then it's a moot point.
Yeah, because I'll jump back in. Because this makes me recall something about like the area A, B, and C OCP updates. And we passed a motion saying, okay, let's go and do public engagement, but then the area B OCP didn't get their, their first and second reading, and therefore it became kind of confusing as we had directed staff to do public engagement, but we don't have the first and second, and now we're in the position where area A and area C are doing public engagement, but area B isn't, even though we passed a motion saying that we'll do public engagement for area B. And this is where I'm concerned that we might run ourselves into a potential issue if, when we get to the actual zoning bylaw, and maybe we want to amend it or do any kind of changes. Naturally, if we vote the zoning bylaw down, then I guess we don't do the public hearing. But if we amend the zoning bylaw, then do we still go to public hearing, or do we have to go back to this original motion?
I'll come to you in a second, but
sorry,
either of you have anything to chime in on, or?
No, I think you just let it go through the process and see what happens.
Okay. Thank you, Director Dowd.
I think we're doing a lot of what ifs.
Yeah.
And, there's been a lot of meetings in the last month. I'm pretty sure that 10.1 was forwarded from the planning committee or the committee of the whole to this meeting under the consent agenda, which means that it was approved previously. And the bylaw itself didn't just get invented this afternoon. It came from the planning committee and has been forward. I think the chances of them passing are pretty good since they've been discussed for a long time ahead of time. And I'll just throw in that, whatever we do, it's having a public hearing to talk about a potential bylaw that may or may not be affected by legislation that's just coming about now, but there will be plenty of time to think about that before it gets third reading and adoption.
Thank you. I saw Ms. Run with a hand. If you have a quick comment on this, or should we just move on?
Through the chair, just a quick comment. The staff report put forward the recommendations in the order of considering first and second reading, and then delegation of the public hearing. So it does make sense to deal with them in that order.
Okay, thanks very much. So, yes, anything new, or?
Yeah, I concur with our manager of planning services, Laura Rodden, that in the planning committee, it was put forward in the order of dealing with first and second reading and then doing the public hearing. Right now, we're dealing with the public hearing motion first, and then we'll be dealing with the first and second reading, which is backwards from what was at the planning committee. And that was something that I was bringing up before when we were going over the order, that we should pull the public hearing and put it after the zoning bylaw.
Let's hear what the corporate officer has to say here.
Thank you. Yes, so at committee level, it was that the committee recommend to the board that the board give first and second reading. And so that would be the resolution that would normally appear under here. Under 12.1, it should say that the board recommend to the board that they give first and second reading. An actual reading occurs under section 14. And at committee level, it would go that and then this. If 10.1, which is now 11.3, goes through, but 12.1 doesn't, or really the one that needs to go through is 14.4. And if that doesn't occur, then I suppose we wouldn't be proceeding.
And I think the issue we've run into is the the public hearing motion at planning committee was unanimous, so it's on the consent agenda, which came first, whereas the zoning bylaw itself was not unanimous, and therefore it has occurred after, and that's why I concur with the manager of planning services comment that it actually goes first and second reading and then planning public hearing thing, because right now it's like, yes, let's do a public hearing, but we can't talk about the zoning bylaw yet.
So where are we at here? Do we have a mover and a seconder for 11-3?
We do.
Yes.
No, we do.
Okay, yeah, McCormick and Gisborne.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, seeing no other hands, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Oh, now we're moving on to 12.1.
Just for,
sorry.
can I recommend just a wording change, because this is a resolution directing the board to give first and second reading.
Sure.
So this should say that the board recommends to the board that they give first and second reading of number 594.
Okay, everybody got that? It's actually just recommending it for later in the meeting. We have a mover on this. Director Lennox, thank you. Director McCormick, any discussion? Director Gisborne.
Yeah, looking at the bylaw and hearing from our planning department, primary dwelling is allowed, secondary dwelling is allowed under the agricultural land reserve regulations and under the zoning bylaw. But the zoning bylaw doesn't seem to allow agritourism as a permitted use, is because I believe that was what Director Lennox had asked. But the agricultural land reserve does actually allow agritourism to occur on ALR. So if this zoning bylaw is going to be in any way, shape, or form different than what's in the ALR rules and regulations, then well, I got a couple of ideas on how to rectify that. The first, which I think would actually be the easiest and the smoothest, is adjust the boundary of the zoning bylaw to just not even include the ALR. And that'd be nice, because then we would never get stuck with the situation of enforcing provincial rules in the electoral area. And, you know, we spent a lot of time this morning unhappy with provincial downloading of provincial rules and responsibilities onto us. So if the boundary got adjusted so that it didn't include any of the ALR, I would be happy to move forward. Otherwise, I would highly recommend that we would then send this proposed zoning bylaw to the Agricultural Advisory Committee for their input, because I have heard from a couple of farmers in the electoral areas that are in the process of considering doing some agritourism activities on their properties, you know, short-term rentals, those kind of things, because as I understand it, ALR is very limited from providing long-term rentals. They are allowed to do short-term rentals, but there is also very specific criteria that has to be followed under the provincial guidelines. I think has to do with, like, you know, no permanent structures kind of thing. Like, you don't get to build a hotel, but you know, things like little camper pads and stuff seem to be permissible. So that's my initial concern on how this zoning bylaw would kind of overlap with the ALR, because my attitude has always been, you know, the province writes the rules, they can pay to enforce it. And thankfully the province is now enforcing rules on ALR. So if we adjust that boundary, then I think we can leave that responsibility with the province. And I won't repeat myself too much on the other point. Our zoning bylaws restrict access to housing by restricting the number of dwelling units. We have a housing needs assessment that's going to be coming up in a month. And I believe that there should be some more information and details there. And I think that might actually guide our thoughts and decisions on how we can amend and update our OCPs to provide some residential flexibility in our electoral areas. Because otherwise it's, you know, this is one of the reasons why the province is bringing in things like Bill 44 on local governments. They don't like these kind of zoning bylaws. They're in the process of kind of ripping them out.
Okay, Ms. Rodden has her hand up.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of comments in regards to the content to the bylaw. Just a reminder that the bylaw was reviewed with the property owners that live within the Krompocker Road area, and their concerns were accommodated in the bylaw that came to Planning Committee and that is in front of the board right now. And there were no concerns with the agricultural regulations in the bylaw as it's worded. And the properties affected by the ALR are all just 1 hectare properties, and there's only a very small portion of those properties. If you look at the map on the last page of the bylaw, they're not large enough to support multiple dwellings on a parcel. You need to have a 1 hectare parcel to have a dwelling. So I don't think that is a concern of the community, and it's also acceptable for local governments to have more restrictions on ALR land than the ALC does. And that's what this bylaw does, and the community was not up in arms about it, and it is going to go to public hearing. And so if there are people that have those concerns, then the board will hear them at the public hearing.
Okay, thanks very much. Anybody else? Okay, Director Gisborne?
So does this public hearing then go out to all of the agricultural properties? Because it seems to be setting a precedent. And my understanding is the Agricultural Advisory Committee is like, their purpose is to review any kind of local government regulations that are being brought onto agricultural land so that they can provide input. And this zoning bylaw has not gone before the Agricultural Advisory Committee. And while the neighborhood may be happy with restricting agricultural land within their neighborhood, the value of agricultural land is beyond any neighborhood, and it's beyond any local community or even any region. It is a provincial-wide important topic, and that is why the provincial government 50 years ago created that land designation. And you can have more than 1 dwelling per hectare on a piece of property if you're compliant with the Ministry of Health for their water and sewer systems. And I know of a number of properties in the electoral areas that do have more than 1 dwelling per hectare. I understand that it's 1 dwelling per hectare for subdivision, but if you try and subdivide ALR, I think we all know how successful that is. So as it stands, like I would prefer that this be sent to the Agricultural Advisory Committee for review if this is going to be any different than what is currently allowed by the Ministry of Agriculture.
Okay. Are there any other comments? Director Lennox.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm just wondering, is there, we're going to public consultation, as Ms. Rodden said, and I think it is reasonable that our committee should be part of that consultation in some way. So I think we've already passed that motion, I believe. So we're sort of after the fact, but I do think it's reasonable if there's a way to consult our committee. That's also good information. Might be a little too late in this discussion. Any options there?
Ms. Rodden?
Couple of options through the chair. I have a couple of options to offer. One is the Area A official community plan. Agricultural policies were reviewed by the Agricultural Advisory Committee prior to adoption of that OCP, and the zoning is consistent with the OCP. So, I mean, one option is, that it's consistent with the OCP. So the Ag Advisory Committee did have input. The second option is you could hold off on first and second reading and refer it to the Agricultural Advisory Committee and then consider first and second reading after you get any advice from that committee.
How much of a delay would that cause? Because it's my understanding that people have been waiting for quite some time already. Is that not correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. It's been 2 years in the making. If it goes to Ag Advisory Committee, their next scheduled meeting is the end of February. And then we would turn around a staff report to Planning Committee following that. So that would probably, we wouldn't be able to make, would be the April Planning Committee meeting.
Okay. I mean, I'm inclined to go ahead with it as it is. It's been a long time and it's only first and second readings and the public engagement is going to happen. So, seeing no other hands, that's your third kick at the can here.
Yeah.
Because we're have something new.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the area AOCP. Lands designated agricultural may be used for single family residential, secondary suite, and a broad range of agricultural uses, including, and then it goes through them. So looking at the OCP policy, I would think that it would include agritourism, whereas the zoning bylaw doesn't seem to actually clarify that explicitly. And myself, I know I'm a farmer and I'm looking through it through one lens. I would be fine with doing first and second reading and sending it to the Agricultural Advisory Committee. But maybe that might be putting the cart before the horse. So I would actually be happy with it going to the Agricultural Advisory Committee. We keep the zoning bylaw in our minds when we get the upcoming housing needs assessment, which should be next month. And that might also change, some of the housing policies in this zoning bylaw, because my thoughts are, yes, it's been several years, but it's really been only in front of us for about a month, like us at this board and committee level. And there's something I like to say on the farm, which is, if you're going to do something, let's do it right. Do it right the first time. So that's, I see our manager of planning services has her hand up. So I'd like to.
Okay, Ms. Rodden.
Through the chair. It's a very simple light touch bylaw. Now, if you look at the agricultural regulations, principal uses, permitted agriculture, and single family dwelling, you go to the definitions, and agriculture is defined as means the activities and uses as defined in the Agricultural Land Commission Act and in Part 2 of the Agricultural Land Reserve Use Subdivision and Procedure Regulations. So, I think that while you don't have the complete list of uses that are allowed in this bylaw, it defaults to what's considered agriculture by the ALC. So I just don't, I don't see the need for delaying for this content. I think it's very clear, and I think the concerns raised by the director are not concerns based on the definition of agriculture.
Okay, thanks very much. It's been around. No, you've had 3 kicks at the can already. That's one beyond what you're supposed to get according to our policies.
Our policy says you're only allowed to speak twice. That's it.
Officer.
It says a minimum, not maximum.
Thank you. 1.8 of the procedure bylaw indicates that we use Robert's Rules of Order, and that does limit each speaker to 2 times.
Okay, so I don't think things are going to change a whole lot from right now, but let's do the vote. All in favor? We got 3?
Oh, no, that's opposed. Yeah,
I know. Well, that was the 3rd. Director Gisborne opposes. Motion carries. Item 12.2. We have a recommendation in front of us. Do I have somebody who would like to make that motion? Fall. Seconded by Nobody's, I'll second it. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries. Great. Bylaws, number 14.1. Risk management conversion and service establishment bylaw number 523.1 2023. Can I get somebody to read that?
I'll read it.
Anybody? Thank you, Director Dowd.
I'll read it for
There we
you.
go. Long pause there.
Okay. That the board give first and second reading of waste management conversion and service establishment bylaw number 523.1 2023.
Okay, so it's all directors, unweighted vote. Do we have a seconder? Director Isaacson, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
I will move that the board give third reading of the waste management conversion and service establishment bylaw number 523.1 2023.
Seconded by Director Lennox, thank you. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
Final one is that the board adopt waste management conversion.
Sorry.
No, sorry, you must have
I
it.
want to do that.
Nope.
Cross out number 3.
Yeah,
Yes.
Save that for another day.
yeah, it's the same thing for 14.2, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Inspector municipalities will be happy.
So item 14.2, can I get somebody to read that one?
I'll move that the board give first and second reading of the Skiddy Island Fire Protection Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 341.4 2023.
Seconded by Director McCormick. Any discussion? Being none, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
I move that the board give third reading of the Skiddy Island Fire Protection Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 341.4 2023.
Seconded Director McCormick. Any discussion? Oh, sorry, Director.
Just voting.
Okay, all in favor?
Get ahead of the game.
All right, none opposed, motion carries. So now we are on to 14.3. Director's Remuneration and Expenses Amendment Bylaw number 558.7 2023. Get somebody to read that for me. I can move it. Director Dowd, you're doing a great job.
Move that the board give first and second reading of Director's Remuneration and Expenses Amendment Bylaw number 558.7 2023.
Seconded by Director Fall. Any discussion? None, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
See how far we can go here without being told to stop. That the board give third reading of the Director's Remuneration and Expenses Amendment Bylaw number 558.7 2023.
Seconded by Director Fall. Any discussion? None, all in favor? Carries.
Do we adopt this one or do we have to?
Yes, yep, we're allowed to do this.
Oh, good. That the board adopt Director's Remuneration and Expenses Amendment Bylaw number 558.7 2023.
Seconded Director Fall. At discussion, seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries. 14.4, proposed Krompocker Road zoning bylaw number 594 2023. Director Lennox.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I move that the board give first and second reading of Krompocker Road zoning bylaw number 594 2023.
Seconded by Director McCormick. Discussion. Director Gisborne.
Thank you. Yeah, taking a look at the Nootka Street zoning bylaw, which has very similar language. We had an issue earlier this year where an individual was putting sites in, getting ready for what appeared to be RV hookups, RV motorhome kind of things, right? The email we got from staff was that those are considered a dwelling unit under the zoning bylaw. I am looking at information bulletin number 6 of the Agricultural Land Reserve. They consider RVs, vehicles, trailers, tents, or other structures located on campsite field or other areas to be considered a sleeping unit. So the zoning bylaw considers those to be dwelling units. The ALR considers those to be sleeping units, and therefore they are different between the zoning bylaw and the provincial legislation. So what we are actually talking about here is bringing in rules and regulations that are more restrictive than what is currently allowed on ALR, and this has not gone before the Agricultural Advisory Committee, and therefore I am opposed to it.
Okay. Any other discussion on this one? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Director Gisborne is opposed.
You don't get to vote, George.
ABCD one.
ABCD, sorry, I should have said that. New business, no new business, correct?
None.
Question period, Director, Mr. Galinsky.
Yes, I am online, Chair. I don't have any questions this afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Proposed closed session. Can I get Director Gisborne? Do I read that out again?
Certainly.
Thanks.
I think I got enough breath. Okay. I move that the board move in camera that the meeting be closed to the public on the grounds that the subject matter to be considered relates to matters covered by the community charter under section 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the regional district or another position appointed by the regional district. B, personal information about an identifiable individual who is being considered for a regional district award or honor, or who has offered to provide a gift to the regional district on condition of anonymity. C, labor relations or other employee relations. I, discussions with regional district, L, discussions with regional district officers and employees respecting regional district objectives, measures, and progress reports for the purposes of preparing an annual report under section 98, annual regional district report, and N, the consideration of whether a board meeting should be closed under a provision of this subsection or subsection 2.
You, seconded by Director McCormick. And all in favor? Opposed, motion carries. We're going in camera.
And the board procedure bylaw says a speaker's opportunity to continue to debate is exhausted.
passing.
It's still valid, right?
I hope so.
It's a big tax jump.
I think we're back in open session, Chair.
Okay, the board would like to rise and report on the following. The board reappointed Molly Ariel, Sandy Dunlap, and Steve Short to the Catholic Regional District Board of Variance for 3-year terms ending December 31st, 2026. And the board will send a letter of appreciation to former alternate director Terry Hollow for her service as an alternate director for Electoral Area D. With that, we've reached the end of our agenda, so the meeting is adjourned. I hope you all have a happy holidays and enjoy the break.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you and Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
See you guys.